Welcome back, everybody, to Niners Now. I'm your host, Brady Grustas, at GrustasBrady on X. You can follow me there. And today, I've got some more players that the 49ers should look to trade for at this year's trade deadline. We talked last time about edge rushers, but today I want to diversify. I've got potential help all over the field for the 49ers. This is going to be a full trades video. We are going full focus on the trades today. I know everyone wants to see the Niners get better after that week 4 loss. So stick around, stay tuned, because I think I got some pretty good options. Before we begin, though, go ahead and subscribe down below. Leave a like, leave a comment, and let's get into it. So, like I said, the 49ers certainly look like they could use some help. And with 3 wins already this year and an easy schedule coming up, I think it makes sense for John Lynch to get aggressive, like he often does, and try and capitalize on this opportunity to make the playoffs this year. I mean, we've seen Lynch get aggressive and make big trades when the 49ers are just as injured and playing much worse. Like we saw back in 2022, the Niners trade for Christian McCaffrey when they were, They were 3-4 at that point, I believe, by Halloween when they made that trade. It was not a great season for San Francisco until Christian McCaffrey got there. And we've seen like the Emmanuel Sanders trade, we've seen Charles Omenihu, we've seen Jordan Willis, all these in-season trades that really make a difference. And I would not be shocked to see Lynch make another one this year. And yeah, right, the road to the playoffs is not going to be easy. There's a ton of injuries. We're coming up on that kind of tricky stretch of the 49ers schedule. But there is a unique opportunity this year to get it done with that last place schedule and having injured players returning as the season goes on, like George Kittle, Malik Mustafa, Brandon Ayuk. These guys will come back eventually, and that's kind of a unique spot to be in for your team to be getting better as the year goes on, and less injured as opposed to more injured, right? That's not usual. So I think making a trade and capitalizing on that opportunity is a pretty good idea. And who should the 49ers be calling about? Well, I scrubbed through all the different NFL rosters, and I've identified 5 players who could be affordable, available, and actually helpful once they get to San Francisco. But who are those players? Let's take a look. I want to start with one of the more surprising names on this list. It's Odafe Oweh from the Baltimore Ravens. Who would have thought that the Ravens could be sellers at this year's deadline? Certainly not me. I thought they would be much closer to the Super Bowl. But right now, they're sitting at 1-3, and they're about as injured as the 49ers. I mean, Lamar Jackson is banged up. Nnamdi Madubuike is out for the year with a neck injury. And their defense has been one of the worst in the NFL. They've given up more than 35 points to every team besides the Browns this year. And Oweh hasn't gotten home for a sack yet, but he is coming off a breakout season last year and is in the final year of his contract. The Ravens are going to have to pay pretty big money for a guy as talented as Oweh, who's still only 26 years old. But my question is that really worth it? If you're paying Lamar and Madubuike and Derrick Henry and Kyle Hamilton already, and you've got to pay one of your tight ends, either Mark Andrews or Isaiah Likely, you've got to pay Tyler Linderbaum, and you've got to pay Zay Flowers down the line, there's just not a ton of money left over. You can't pay everybody in this league. 49ers fans know that after the last couple off seasons. And in a down year, why not get some good value for Oweh, who you might not have room to pay anyways? I think it totally depends on what the Ravens want to do and how much Oweh is asking for. But I could certainly see a scenario where Baltimore is 3-5 at the trade deadline, and they want to do kind of a soft reset for next year. In that case, I would love for the Niners to send the Ravens a mid-round pick for Oweh, somewhere 4th, maybe 4th and a 5th, something like that. He's not a top 15 edge rusher in the NFL by any means, right? He's not close, but he's clearly a starting caliber edge rusher who can play on all 3 downs if you need him to. Is he the best run defender in the world? No. He's more of a pass rusher. That's his game. But he can hold his own in the run game. He's not, 220 pounds or whatever. He's 265, got a big frame. But you know what? Weirdly, the Ravens have not let him play on all 3 downs. Oweh plays this sort of designated pass rush role in Baltimore that has really limited his ability to impact the game. Oweh has played fewer snaps than both Tavius Robinson and second-round rookie Mike Green 3 games in a row now. He's only playing 47% of the defensive snaps this year, which is the lowest of his career. So, to recap, the Ravens are losing games, they're running out of money, and they're choosing to play a rookie, Mike Green, over Owe. So, sounds like they might be ready to move on. It would be a bit of a scheme change from the Ravens' 3-4 sort of multiple defense to Robert Saleh's primarily 4-3 defense, but playing Owe out wide at the 9 technique position should maximize his athleticism and give him plenty of room to beat opposing tackles. And also, we'd probably have to see him in coverage a whole lot less than we do in Baltimore right now. With Bosa out for the year, spending a draft pick to rent Owe's services for the year before letting him gain a big or at least mid-sized contract on the open market, that's something I would personally be happy to do. Now, for real this time, let's look away from the defensive line, okay? I love the D-line, I love my edge rushers, but I promised you guys I would look at some other positions, and I do have another option. Connor Colby and Dominic Pooney have not been good in recent weeks for the 49ers. Pooney is dealing with that injury from the preseason. He's been battling through it all year, and it is clear to see. I mean, credit to Pooney for playing through it, but he's not even close to the level he was at last year. And Colby had a great debut, but he's really regressed to the mean as soon as he tweaked that groin. He's allowed more pressures than anyone on the team the past 2 weeks. So what if the 49ers made the rare trade for an offensive lineman and brought in Wyatt Teller from the Cleveland Browns? The Browns actually just traded for an offensive lineman. They got Cam Robinson from the Texans. They've been dealing with injuries at offensive tackle, so they bring in Robinson. But their interior offensive line, specifically their guard position, is pretty interesting because it's actually pretty deep. You've got Wyatt Teller and Joel Bitonio, who are 2 of the better guards in the NFL, but they're 2 guys who are already over 30 years old. And behind them, you've got Tevin Jenkins, who was a really interesting prospect coming out of college, but who's been really held back by injuries. He's a Brown now, and so is Zach Zinter, the former Michigan Wolverine, who was widely praised in the 2024 draft class. Zinter was a 3rd-round pick, and Jenkins is a really high upside player. Both Teller and Bitonio are in the final year of their contracts, so if I'm the Browns GM, I would seriously consider trading those guys, or at least one of them, and just kind of see what I've got in Zinter and Jenkins. The Browns are 1-3, they're last in their division, and they're clearly still rebuilding. They've got a long way to go, and while you don't want to get rid of good players for no reason, it is also important to get younger in the NFL. However, if you're the 49ers, you've got a chance at Wyatt Teller. I mean, this is a guy who's a multi-time All-Pro, 3 Pro Bowl selections in a row, and he's played 100% of the offensive snaps this year. That's relevant because, he's dealt with injuries in the past, and he's dependable as it gets this year. Like I said, 100% of offensive snaps for Mr. Teller, and the 49ers could really use that. Now, maybe you go after Bitonio, who's a few years older, because he plays left guard, and Wyatt Teller plays on the right, which is where Pooney plays. But I do think the 49ers should absolutely send a 5th or a 6th round pick to the Browns for one of these 2 guards. They could absolutely use the help. Teller would be my preference. I think he's a little better than Bitonio, and like I said, he's a couple years younger. And if they go get Teller and he plays well, I would totally be down to re-sign him once his contract is up. Now, moving on, we got to look at the secondary, all right? Renardo Green has been a bit of an issue so far in his sophomore year. He hasn't trusted his technique. He's been allowing more catches and yards than any other DB on the team. And now he's got a neck injury that kept him out of week 4 and might keep him out of week 5. I don't love Darrell Luter Jr. having to start at outside corner. So I think that Quantez Stiggers from the New York Jets is a realistic trade candidate for the Niners. If Renardo's neck injury is serious, you'd be adding an upgrade over Luter, and if it's minor, then you'd be adding some pretty solid depth. The Jets are terrible. They're 0-4. They just dropped to 0-4 on Monday night. They have no quarterback, and they're in year 1 of a rebuild with new head coach Aaron Glenn. There is a lot of work to do in New York. But they did make a nice move this past week that I was honestly a pretty big fan of. The Jets swapped late-round picks with the Tennessee Titans in order to get Jarvis Brownlee Jr. at cornerback. It's an awesome move. Brownlee was pretty solid for Tennessee, and they got him for nearly nothing. So now the Jets have Sauce Gardner, they have Jarvis Brownlee, and they have their third-round rookie, Azariah Thomas, out of Florida State. Quantez, as a result, is not playing at all for the Jets. He hasn't gotten a single defensive snap all year long. He's been exclusively a special teams player. But just last year, he was a fifth-round pick by Robert Saleh. Quantez was a really interesting prospect last year because he had phenomenal athletic testing and really nice size, but he didn't play college football. He played in the CFL for the Toronto Argonauts. So the adjustment to the NFL game was a real hurdle for him. He did start a game for the Jets last year. It was a 32-25 win against the Jaguars. Technically, he's 1-0 as a starter, undefeated. So if Robert Saleh is still a believer in Quantez's talent, I think the Niners should absolutely swap seventh-rounders with the Jets to go ahead and bring him in. He's not getting a shot in New York, pretty clearly. So bring him here, and he could certainly get a shot. Now, the 49ers need stability and they need explosiveness on offense, especially at the wide receiver position. They've tried Band-Aids like Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Kendrick Bourne and Sky Moore, but those have not worked. Brandon Ayuk might not be back until week 10. Ricky Pearsall is banged up. Jawan Jennings, I think, has 4 different injured body parts currently. Jordan Watkins and Jacob Cowing are both hurt. I think it would be worth it for the Niners to add another wide receiver. And if you want explosiveness, there might not be a better receiver available than Rashid Shaheed from the New Orleans Saints. Shaheed is one of the fastest players in the league, and he's a legitimate deep threat at receiver. He really broke out last year under offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak, former 49ers coach. He had a really phenomenal start to that year before a season-ending injury in, I believe, week 6 or 7. But Shaheed is back this year, and while he isn't playing quite as well as he did in 2024, he's still a solid contributor and a guy who catches passes pretty reliably. Not to mention, Shaheed is a former All-Pro return man, so maybe the 49ers would be interested in putting him back there as well. If the price is maybe a 5th rounder, ideally a 6th rounder, I think this would be a no-brainer to go trade for Shaheed. He's on the last year of his contract, so the asking price from New Orleans should be lower. I'd be pretty surprised if the Saints were willing to pay Shaheed big money on some sort of long-term deal. I think they'd rather give that money to Chris Olave. And they also traded for a receiver this year in Devon Vele. And of course, that's not to mention the youth they've got, in the depth of that receiver room with Bub Means, Mason Tipton, Trey Palmer, and Jalen Polk, who they actually also traded for this season. Totally forgot about him because he's been on IR all year. Now, most of those guys are injured, right? The Saints are not exactly deep with healthy receivers at the moment, but they're 0-4, right? And it's not like Shaheed is their entire offense. They've been at least competitive in every game they've played without Shaheed going absolutely beast mode and carrying them. They're probably losing Shaheed anyways after this year. He has not been as good without Clint Kubiak, so they may as well get some sort of compensation for him. And for the 49ers, you've got a ridiculous amount of injuries. You need speed. You need explosiveness. You'd be returning Shaheed to a system where he feels pretty comfortable. I think this is a no-brainer for both teams. Now, I've got one trade target left, and guys, I can't help myself. I've got another edge rusher, and this one's more of a big name, kind of a big fish. It's Jalen Phillips from the Miami Dolphins. Speaking of big fish, maybe we go get a dolphin. Ha 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 ha. Subscribe for more bad puns like that. Anyways, Miami did get their first win of the year on Monday night against the Jets. But they've been pretty bad so far this year. Losses to the Colts, to the Patriots, and to the Bills. For my money, the first coach fired this season will be Mike McDaniel. I'll still stand on that. I think Miami needs a complete and total reset, especially after Tyreek Hill went down in Monday's game. That injury was awful. If you have not seen the video, do not watch it. It was disgusting. Trade everybody. Fire everybody. Total scorched earth. Get rid of everyone in Miami. That's the only thing that I think can really save this franchise. You got to tear it down and build it back up again from the very bottom. I think they have no future. I think they need a new coach. They need a new GM. They need a new quarterback. They need a new roster. And Jalen Phillips, while he is their best edge rusher, he was a supremely talented first-round pick coming out of Miami, he's in the last year of his contract. And if I'm the Dolphins, I'm so far away from contending, I'm not paying real edge rusher money to a guy like Phillips, who has never had more than 10 sacks in a year. He's only started double-digit games in a season once, and the rest of the team could use so much help. You could use any sort of draft capital you get for Phillips in a bunch of different ways to fix the rest of this roster. Phillips was phenomenal in 2022, let me be honest, but he did tear his Achilles in 2023 and then his ACL in 2024. Phillips has played in all 4 games so far this year, and he's been playing pretty well in his return. Had a nice game on Monday. And the upside, man, it is unreal for Phillips. He's this big edge rusher with quickness and sweet technique. He's a lot like former UCLA pass rusher Laiatu Latu, who's with the Colts right now, dominating. Good for Latu. But of course, the injuries are a huge risk for Phillips, and that makes it really tricky to kind of nail down a price. This guy would be the 49ers' best healthy edge rusher, but then it's the question, will he be healthy? I would love the move for the 49ers if they could swing this deal for a 4th-round pick. If Phillips is underwhelming or he gets hurt again, then you just let him walk in free agency, you don't pay him, and then, you wipe your hands clean, right? But if Phillips is phenomenal, which I think he could be, I think you seriously consider paying him and creating the best pass rush duo in the entire NFL. Like, that's the sort of ceiling that Phillips has. Normally, when trading for a guy like this, when trading for some sort of rental young edge rusher, like we did with Chase Young, right? Normally, you're expecting them to walk at the end of the year, but I think Phillips has enough potential and has enough upside that if he plays well enough, you might have to pay this guy. And yeah, I know you just drafted Mykel Williams. I know you've got Bryce Huff. But Phillips has that level of potential. I think he could really be a top 15, top 10 edge rusher in the NFL very soon if he can stay healthy. And if Phillips is legit once again, then this group of Bosa and Phillips and Mykel and Bryce Huff, that'd be dominant, right? They would be incredible. That'd be the best edge room in football. Wouldn't even be close. Now, this would be, a very big fish type of addition for the 49ers at the trade line in the vein of, the Chase Young, Christian McCaffrey type of trade, as opposed to the other trades, which I think are a little more realistic. But I'd be really, really interested in seeing what Phillips would look like in the Robert Saleh defense. So those are my guys, right? These are the players that I really want the Niners to go trade for. Odafe Owe, Wyatt Teller, Quantez Stiggers, Rashid Shaheed, and Jalen Phillips. Who is your favorite option out of those guys? Let me know in the comments down below. Mine, I'm sure you could tell by my tone of voice, is Jalen Phillips. I think I called it a less realistic option, but I do think it makes sense for the Dolphins and the 49ers. And I'm just such a huge fan of that guy's game. And with the injuries and the expiring deal, I think the trade would have to be pretty cheap for Phillips. So I'm a big fan of Phillips. I hope he's a future 49er. Let me know down below in the comments who you'd like to see. So that is it for this episode. What position do you think the 49ers should trade for? And are there any names that I left out that you'd like to see in the red and gold? Let me know down below. Leave a comment, leave a like, and let me know if there's any topics that you'd like to see me cover. Thank you all for watching, and subscribe for 49ers videos 5 days a week. I'm Brady Grustas, at Grustas Brady on X. This has been Niners Now, and I'll see you tomorrow.